guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, highly requested by you guys. Let me know what other Stoic texts you'd like me to make videos on. I had a lot of blood drawn today, so things might get a little crazy. We'll see, it'll be fun. And without further ado, let's get into it. Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. Lesson number 1 from the Stoic text was that traveling and moving around is not going to solve your issues because you are bringing your issues along with you everywhere you go. He talks about this a surprising amount of times in his letters to, I believe, his younger brother. And as a person who is moving because I'm not happy where I'm currently living, this one definitely hit home. Let me read you what he said. You do not tear from place to place and unsettle yourself with one move after another. Restlessness of that sort is symptomatic of a sick mind. Nothing, to my way of thinking, is better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. Now, this is true. You should be able to find a semblance of inner peace wherever you are, even in the direst of circumstances. He's also calling me out a little, because if you just move from place to place thinking that, oh, this place I'll be happier, this next place I'm going to find my home, you have what it takes to make a home within you. It is not due to external circumstances. In another letter, he talks about how you should have the inner peace that you can sleep in any sort of circumstances. It doesn't have to be specifically dark. It doesn't have to be extremely quiet, a specific temperature. You should be able to foster that sense of inner quietness and solitude, even in a very loud home. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. People who spend their whole life traveling abroad end up having plenty of places where they can find hospitality, but no real friendships. I actually talked about this in a video I made a few months ago, where I said that as part of constantly having to pick up and move as a child, you don't really have a home base. You don't really have a place where all your friends and family are, where you have a sense of community. Your friends are kind of scattered all over the world. Your family's scattered all over the world. And it can be very displacing and destabilizing. Whatever your destination, you will be followed by your failings. Here he's quoting Socrates. How can you wonder your travels do you no good when you carry yourself around with you? You are saddled with the very thing that drove you away. True, maybe we should be more critical of the internal problems we have rather than the external circumstances, the setting where we live. I think it is so easy to blame the place where we live for our problems. I do it all the time. I probably should work on that. So maybe some food for thought there. The man who spends his time choosing one resort after another in a hunt for peace and quiet will in every place he visits find something to prevent him from relaxing. What a blessing it would be for some people if they could only lose themselves. What good does it do you to go overseas, to move from city to city? If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Facts. Which is why when I move, I always give myself a new set of guidelines for how I want to live my life. I give myself sort of behavioral lifestyle changes because it's the best time to do it. When you have a new surrounding with no associations, you can create more of the life that feels aligned with you. Something else that he talks about a lot in this is the idea of choosing your friends wisely, not choosing indiscriminately. Once you have those friends, really trusting them because you've picked them well, and being very careful who you associate with, because people who do not have morality are going to rub off on you. So here he's talking about how not everybody is your friend, okay? Don't treat everyone like they're your friend. If you are looking on anyone as a friend when you do not trust him as you trust yourself, you are making a grave mistake and have failed to grasp sufficiently the full force of true friendship. Those people who judge a man after they have made him their friend instead of the other way around certainly put the cart before the horse. Think for a long time whether or not you should admit a given person to your friendship, but when you have decided to do so, welcome him heart and soul and speak unreservedly with him as you would with yourself. I used to do this all the time. I would just accept anyone as my friend indiscriminately just because they wanted to hang out, just because they were warm to me. It took me years to finally realize that is not a good way to find quality people in your life. It will bring you down. And now I really vet people. Now I really make sure that we have similar values first. There are certain people who tell any person they meet things that should only be confided to friends, unburdening themselves of whatever is on their minds into any ear they please. Here he's talking about trauma dumping, people who get way too intimate way too quickly, who overshare. That can be detrimental for you because you don't know if this person is trustworthy, and it can also be detrimental for the relationship because the other person might not consent to hearing that. They might not want to. It might make them uncomfortable, or they might judge you in some way. Trusting everyone is as much a fault as trusting no one. Vet some people, decide who you want to admit into your inner circle, then trust those people. Don't treat everybody as a friend. Don't treat everybody as if they have your best interests at heart. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach. In other words, yes, make sure you're associating with people who can elevate you in some way, who can make you more like what you aspire to be, and also surround yourself with people who you also help, because the best way to learn something is by teaching it. Here he speaks against being friends with people who are just users. The ending inevitably matches the beginning. A person who starts being friends with you because it pays him will similarly cease to be friends because it pays him to do so. On this next part, he talks about how people you associate with can be kind of like your conscience. If you have them around you, if you internalize a part of their values, you will notice yourself acting with greater integrity. Misdeeds are greatly diminished if a witness is always standing near intending doers. The personality should be provided with someone it can revere, someone whose influence can make its private inner life more pure. Happy the man who improves other people, not merely when he is in their presence, but even when he is in their thoughts. A person able to revere another thus will soon deserve to be revered himself. Without a ruler to do it against, you won't make the crooked straight. Now, this next paragraph, he was talking about people who, when they lose somebody, when somebody actually perishes from their life, they pretend to have cared for that person so much more than they actually did when that person was alive. I know somebody who's done this, and it is so transparent, dude. Everyone who knows what that relationship was like when the person was alive can see right through it. Can you stand people who treat their friends with complete neglect and then mourn them to distraction, never caring about anyone unless they have lost him? And the reason they lament them so extravagantly then is that they are afraid people may wonder whether they did care. They are looking for belated means of demonstrating their devotion. The lady doth protest too much. If you never spent time with somebody while they were alive, never really cared, never gave them the light of day, second they pass away, you're suddenly posting them all over social media saying, oh my God, this person was so important to me. I understand even people who are a little bit callous can sometimes feel grief, but it's just a little hard to buy. And one last quote about the importance of associating with quality people. If you wish to be stripped of your vices, you must get right away from the examples others set of them. The miser, the swindler, the bully, the cheat, who do you a lot of harm by simply being near you, are actually inside you. Move to better company. He's talking about that internalization that we take from other people. The people we associate with, a lot of their traits that we're exposed to, we internalize as our own. So merely by being in the presence of someone who's acting without integrity, without certain values or morals or ethics, you're probably going to become a little less good of a person as well. Up next, Seneca talks about not only just associating with people who can become our conscience, but really being our own witnesses, having that character inside us that constantly tells us to do better, that assesses our own behavior for things we might have done wrong. So to the best of your ability, demonstrate your own guilt, conduct inquiries of your own into all the evidence against yourself. Play the part first of prosecutor, then of judge, and finally of pleader in mitigation. Be harsh with yourself at all times. Caveat, would not recommend this to somebody that is already lacking in self-compassion or very, very hard on themselves. I think a lot of people could use this quote. I think a lot of people could use a little bit of introspection, a little self-awareness, a little bit of taking responsibility for where they've gone wrong in life. How else are we to improve? There resides within us a divine spirit, which guards us and watches in the evil and good we do. As we treat him, so he will treat us. In each and every good man, a God dwells. Now, I don't know about you, I personally don't believe in God, but I do believe in God in the way that he's defining it here. I do believe that we're all part of one unified consciousness that has this essence of goodness in it and love. And within that one unified consciousness, I also believe we have our individual consciousnesses, which are in essence an illusion, but I do think it's important to have them also for health, because when people experience ego death, it's pretty much psychosis. It's not a place you really want to get to. It's a place I think that's important to understand but not visit very often. So in this way of thinking about it, each of us have this piece of God inside of us. our individual consciousnesses who are watching the way we move through the world, watching whether we're making mistakes, whether we're taking responsibility, whether we're doing good things for other people. It's really important to have that little observer inside of us assessing how we're doing so that we can, again, improve moving forward. We should indeed live as if we were in public view and think too as if someone could peer into the inmost recesses of our hearts. What really ruins our characters is the fact that none of us looks back over his life. We think about what we are going to do and only rarely of that, and fail to think about what we have done. Yet any plans for the future are dependent on the past. Now, he's not advocating for constantly ruminating about the things you've done wrong, but I think what he's advocating for is taking responsibility, taking stock of what's happened in the past, and using that to help you move forward in the future. Because as he says, the future depends on the past. Future behavior's best predictor is past behavior. This next paragraph is really interesting. He's talking about people who wrong others, how their conscience will never let them rest, how even if they never get caught, even if they never get punished, they're already punishing themselves. Never to wrong others takes one a long way towards peace of mind. People who know no self-restraint lead stormy and disordered lives, passing their time in a state of fear commensurate with the injuries they do to others, never able to relax. After every act they tremble, paralyzed, their consciences continually demanding an answer, not allowing them to go on with other things. To expect punishment is to suffer it, and to earn it is to expect it. Where there is a bad conscience, some circumstance or other may provide one with impunity, but never with freedom from anxiety. For a person takes that attitude even when he isn't found out, there's always possibility of it. His sleep is troubled. A guilty person sometimes has the luck to escape detection, but never to feel sure of it. I remember when I was younger, there was somebody in my life that was just so cruel constantly. And it felt like they were never really getting consequences for their actions. And to this day, they don't. And then I remember at one point, it occurred to me, they are being punished. They're being punished right now. Having this conflict with other people constantly, even though they're bringing a ton of misery to other people, they're bringing even more misery to themselves. They're hurting themselves already. And we know that when people feel angry frequently, it's a huge risk factor for cardiovascular disease. You really literally are hurting yourself when you act with contempt towards other people. Now, it would be dishonest of me if I didn't acknowledge that a huge component of Seneca's letters includes asceticism. Basically, the virtue of being self-restraining, of imposing these restrictions on yourself in order to have willpower, in order to not need many things, in order to not need luxury and comfort. Because if you're used to it, then later on, if dire circumstances arise, you're going to be wholly prepared for it. And although this is maybe the topic he talks about the most in his letters, I've been putting off mentioning it because I don't entirely agree with it. This is where me and Stoicism do disagree a little. And if you consider yourself like a true Stoic, you might disagree with me now, but I think it's healthy to, even with philosophies that you aspire towards, acknowledge when you disagree with certain aspects. I have mentioned before, a huge reason why I live is for beauty. I love to have a beautiful home that I've decorated. I love to have beautiful clothes with which I can express myself. I like to do my hair and makeup in certain ways. For instance, today, not too happy. I love to travel to beautiful places. I love to stay in nice hotels when possible, to experience beauty in all five senses. That is diametrically opposed to asceticism. Now, I do believe in temperance. I do think that everything should be in moderation. If you enjoy too much delicious food, for instance, it could have negative impact on you. If you enjoy sensuality to the extent that it becomes an addiction for you, obviously that's a problem. If you enjoy luxury to such an extent that you can't just live in simple means when necessary, or that you're becoming greedy because of it, all of these are not great. They're not ideal. And I think our bodies naturally signal a sort of equilibrium with that. Like when I come home from a restaurant or a trip where I ate a ton of really decadent food, I don't even need to restrict or make up for it or eat clean, clean myself out or anything. If you're in tune with your body, if you've done the work, your body kind of just naturally knows. It says hey, you had a lot of pasta this last week. I think it would feel good to have a salad right now. Yeah, let's have a real hearty, crunchy salad. So I'm all for that. I'm all for the value of temperance. But the way Seneca goes about asceticism is a little bit extreme for me. Let me tell you about it. Each day, acquire something which will help you to face poverty or death and other ills as well. What is the proper limit to a person's wealth? First, having what is essential, and second, having what is enough. Indulge the body just so far as suffices for good health. It needs to be treated somewhat strictly to prevent it from being disobedient to the spirit. Your food should appease your hunger, your drink quench your thirst, your clothing keep out the cold, your house be a protection against inclement weather. Here he's actually talking about the hedonic treadmill, so this is very ahead of its own time. Imagine that you've piled up all that a veritable host of rich men ever possessed, that fortune has carried you far beyond the bounds of wealth, so far as any private individual is concerned, building you a roof of gold and clothing in royal purple, conducting you to such a height of opulence and luxury that you hide the earth with marble floors. All these things will only induce in you a craving for even bigger things. Natural desires are limited. Those which spring from false opinions have nowhere to stop. When a person is following a track, there is an eventual end to it somewhere. But with wandering at large, there is no limit. So give up pointless empty journeys, and whenever you want to know whether the desire aroused in you by something you are pursuing is natural or quite unseeing, ask yourself whether it is capable of coming to rest at any point. If after going a long way there is always something remaining further away, be sure it is not something natural. I think that's a great way to put it. If you're ever feeling like you want more in life, stop and ask yourself, is there anything that would ever be enough? Because if not, then that's not natural. A question about what the Stoics refer to as natural. I was going to look this up before filming, but I forgot. What exactly do they mean by nature? Because I find myself a little bit confused by that. Do they just mean like what reflects the same laws of nature? I don't quite understand it. I feel like there is something specific that it means, but maybe nature isn't the word that really brings that to mind. Again, appoint certain days on which to give up everything and make yourself at home with next to nothing. Start cultivating a relationship with poverty. So he tells us about his own ascetic routine. He gave up oysters and mushrooms. I cannot do that. I eat mushrooms like every single day. I love them so much. And I love oysters too. Don't eat them every day. I'd be broke if I did, but love them. He abstains from using scent. He doesn't have wine. He avoids hot baths. He was a vegetarian, at least for a while. He takes cold plunges. You guys, even the Stoics took cold plunges. He sleeps on a hard mattress. That makes sense. Those are sometimes more comfortable, I feel. He says one shouldn't eat until hunger demands. It is essential to make oneself used to putting up with a little. I don't know about this. What do you think about this very extreme self-restraint? Because it's not for me, but I'm curious if it is for you, what you get out of it. He has a lot of advice in here on dealing with chronic pain and on dealing with preemptive grief of your own imminent death. So he had asthma, and back in the day, obviously there weren't modern treatments of asthma. And so there was a point in his life where it brought him to the brink of almost considering unaliving himself, but he abstained because he didn't want to hurt his father. So he is familiar with chronic pain, and he's advising somebody else about how to deal with chronic pain. He says that, at some point when there is so much pain, you kind of become numb to it, so there's that reassurance at least. He talks about the importance of staying positive, telling yourself encouraging things, surrounding yourself with friends. Provided that one's thinking has not been adding anything to it, pain is a trivial sort of thing. If by contrast you start giving yourself encouragement, saying to yourself, it's nothing or nothing much anyway, let's stick it out, it'll be over presently, then in thinking it a trivial matter, you will be ensuring that it actually is. Everything hangs on to one's thinking. Now, when you hear this, you might be thinking, oh my God, that's so dismissive. Has he ever experienced chronic pain? Like I told you, yes, he did. I think sometimes the harshest advice comes from people who have experienced things themselves because they are, in a sense, talking to themselves so harshly. They're talking to their former self and saying, like, the way you approach that was no good. The way you approach that in the future should be different. As for the fear of death, one thing that he says is death is all that was before us, before you were born. What does it matter after all when you cease to be or never begin, when the result of either is that you do not exist? What is death? Either a transition or an end. I am not afraid of coming to an end, this being the same as never having begun, nor of transition. Now this part is lovely. He's comparing life to a play, and he's talking about why you shouldn't be afraid of when it ends. As it is with a play, so it is with life. What matters is not how long the acting lasts, but how good it is. It is not important at what point you stop. And this is really helpful for me because I love life so much. I want to live as much of it as possible. And sometimes I get scared, like, oh, I don't want it to be cut short. I want to live as much of it as I can. But this is reassuring in the sense that, like, even if there's a short play or just a finite play, Just because it was finite doesn't mean it wasn't beautiful. It had to end at some point, right? It couldn't go on forever. Let me just wrap it up with some faster quotes. This is on why you shouldn't be tormented by either the past or the future. Wild animals run from the dangers they actually see, and once they have escaped them, they worry no more. We, however, are tormented alike by what is past and what is to come. Memory brings back the agony of fear, while foresight brings it on prematurely. No one confines his unhappiness to the present, which is why if we were to just be mindful every single second, we would have so much less pain. This next one is to address the misconception that Stoics advocate for not feeling your feelings. So he's talking about the difference between Stoicism and Epicurean. The difference here between the Epicurean and our own school is this. Our wise man feels his troubles but overcomes them, while their wise man does not even feel them. Stoics don't not feel their feelings, they just try to surmount them. They try to be resilient towards them. And if a Stoic ever does tell you that you shouldn't feel your feelings, I don't know that that's so Stoic of them. This next quote is about why old age should be cherished. We should cherish old age and enjoy it. It is full of pleasure if you know how to use it. Fruit tastes more delicious just when its season is ending. Every pleasure defers till its last for its greatest delights. Death ought to be right there before the eyes of a young man just as much as an old one. The order in which we each receive our summons is not determined by our precedence in the register. No one is so very old that it would be quite unnatural for him to hope for one more day. Every day, therefore, should be regulated as if it were the one that brings up the rear, the one that rounds out and completes our lives. Basically, live every day like it's your last, even if you're young, not just if you're old. On dealing with grief, you have buried someone you loved. Now look for someone to love. It is better to make good the loss of a friend than to cry over him. Right? Like, what good does it do the person that's no longer here that you're crying over them? Of course, it's natural to feel grief, and he even talks about how he bawled his eyes out when his friend died. But would they want that for you? Or would they want you to go on and live your life? He basically talks about coping ahead, envisioning the worst case, most catastrophic scenario, and coming to terms with it so that if it does happen to you, you'll be fine. If you can do that, then nothing will scare you because you know that you can handle it. Misfortune has a way of choosing some unprecedented means or other of impressing its power on those who might have said to have forgotten it. This is why we need to envisage every possibility and to strengthen the spirit to deal with the things which may conceivably come up. Rehearse them in your mind. We should be anticipating not merely all that commonly happens, but all that is conceivably capable of happening, if we do not want to be overwhelmed and struck numb by rare events as if they were unprecedented ones. And lastly, I love this paragraph about the polarity of life and how what comes up must come down. After summer, there comes fall. After fall, there comes winter. Don't resist what stage of life you're in, because without that polarity, you wouldn't be able to enjoy the good times. Winter brings in the cold, and we have to shiver. Summer brings back the heat, and we have to swelter. Bad weather tries the health, and we have to be ill. Somewhere or other, we're going to have encounters with wild beasts and with man too, more dangerous than all those beasts. Floods will rob us of one thing, fire of another. These are conditions of our existence which we cannot change. What we can do is adopt a noble spirit, such a spirit that befits a good man, so that we may bear up bravely under all that fortune sends us, and bring our wills into tune with nature's. Reversals, after all, are the means by which nature regulates this visible realm of hers. Clear skies follow cloudy, after the calm comes the storm. The winds take turns to blow, day succeeds night. While part of the heavens is in the ascendant, another is sinking. It is by means of opposites that eternity endures. Assume that whatever happens was bound to happen and refrain from railing at nature. One can do nothing better than endure what cannot be cured. So let us receive our orders readily and cheerfully. With that, I will wrap it up today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, interact with it by letting me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you soon.